And good morning again, and here we are for the next half hour. Just giving to you a little bit of background on the great event tomorrow at 5:15. 40 horses will line up at Aintree, ready to take on the Aintree National Course, the toughest in Britain, not the toughest in the world, I may say, because that goes to the Pardubice, which is in the Czech Republic, and let's see. Yes, here we go. The Pardubice is running each October. And it's over more than 4 miles. It gets about the same number of horses, 40, to run it. And it's not only over a lot of fences and ditches, but also over ploughed fields. And a pretty tough race it is. Nobody is trying hard to make a comparison between that and the National. They're two great races. But the Pardubice is just as tough, if not tougher, than the Grand National, and that comes up in October, whereas ours comes up tomorrow on the 15th of April at Aintree, kicking off at 5:15. So you want to watch that, by all means do. But in the meantime, let's see. Oh, yes, there's another one of them going uphill and down dale in the Pardubice. And that's in running the Czech Republic. But let's now go to why we necessarily paying attention to that. Well, one would is everybody goes and has a flutter on the National. But what we also do is we have here a race course that is now non-functional, but it is a wonderful old race course, and there are parts of it left. And there's a chap called Barry Fuchs who tries very hard to keep the thing going, keep it alive. And it had an event in April, the beginning of April, April the 1st, actually, to try and bring people together to make some commitment to making sure that our race course does not disappear. Now, it just so happens that we have a little feature on the race course. So let's take a look at that. Bearing in mind that there is some relationship between Lewis and the Grand National.
Vroom, vroom. The other day I felt a warmth between myself and Mole and Ratty, the two little characters from Wind in the Willows, as I sat on the banks of the River Ouse and let it drift by. Vroom, vroom. Today I feel more like Toad of Toad Hall, the animal that was always getting himself into trouble because of his excesses. Vroom.
But horsepower is the essence of this episode, because horses played a central part in the history of Lewis. And as might be expected, were often at the centre of violence,
Adding to the history of a bloody town.
Horses, of course, were nothing unique to Britain. Cavalry had been a major part of warfare, and peaceful farming from time to time immemorial. But for Lewis in early times, they were an important part of its economy. The Domesday Book, the first ever audit of England in 1086, records that anyone selling a horse in Lewis should pay to the reeve or estate manager a penny. The buyer also paid a penny. So a horse tax was in place more than 1,000 years ago. and so the horse took centre stage from the earliest of Norman times. I've shown you the tilting grounds where knights on horseback tried to unseat each other. But that was nothing compared to the violence that Lewes races brought to the town.
But I get ahead of myself. Lewes was one of the most famous racecourses in history until 1965.
The fourth oldest in the country, racing began in 1727, although some argue there is evidence it was 26 years before that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lewes. It's the final race meeting here at Lewes, Monday, September the 14th, 1964. The ground is firm and the wind is straight across the course. The runners for the first race, the Cookmere Apprentices Handicap, are on their way to the start. Saucy Lad representing Tom Masson in the purple with the gold star. Number 11 is Nimberg. And away they go. They're off and racing, and Buzz made a bright start there and leads in the early stages. And now a little bit of a rise as they race past the mile marker and head towards the right-hand turn, which will bring them into the home straight. Closing stages with less than 100 yards left to travel. It's Buzz pulling clear, and Buzz goes on to win by about 3 lengths to Misty River in second, Saucy Lad back in third, Great Lady, Nimberg Wave, Methane, the Wolf, and St. Kieran.
In that year, after almost 300 years of horse racing, it closed down for good, mainly because it had no electricity, no running water, in fact, no facilities at all. Yet in the late 18th century, it attracted royalty, the big gamblers of the day, and it produced some champion racehorses over the years that brought great races and great feats to an otherwise pretty but blustery track atop the Downs. Considered by racing folk as the greatest racehorse of all time, Eclipse raced there in 1769. The Derby winner of 1793, Waxy, was a Lewes-trained horse, as was Charlottetown in 1966. Great jockeys rode there, such as Lester Piggott and Gordon Richards.
And Barry, although it started in 1720 or so, you weren't here then, but you were, as a very young boy, involved in this racecourse.
Yeah, I certainly was, yeah. I'd say I was born on race day, 29th of August 1950. My mum's side of the family were all racing people, going back hundreds of years probably, so, you know, my gran used to take us up here.
It's very quiet and serene today, so what was it like on race days up here?
Very, very noisy. Hustle and the bustle of coaches coming up here, cars. I mean, all these places over here were car parks. You had all the horse boxes, the tote men, tic-tac men shouting the odds and everything else. Lots of entertainment going on, you know, and it was very, very busy. A 4-mile race, which started right down the bottom of the hill there. The horses used to run right round there as far as you can see, and come back down here to the winning post.
Right.
They used to have 2 winning posts. They used to have a 5 furlong winning post and a 6 furlong winning post. But what they what they did, they made the 6 furlong winning post another furlong away from the stand, because they both wanted to start them on the straight. Otherwise it was unfair, so they had a straight run.
Right.
In 1914, I think it was 14, they shut that down because they find it was too dangerous, and not only that, for the horses to get up that hill. They used to start them from here, they run them down there, round the loop and back again.
Oh,
and
right.
that made 4 miles, but it had to be like the best out of 3 or something.
Right.
So some of them horses run 12 miles
Jeez.
just to win a race. They had 10 minutes break, they got back after about 9 or 10 minutes, they'd have a bucket of water, drink and wash down, and back they used to go again. After a while, it just phased out a little bit. It used to be a 3-day meeting in August, and then it got to that it was just going to be a day a year. And it got to the stage where it was just one race, and all the horses in that race were trained in Lewes. And the guy that wrote about it, you know, he said this is probably going to be the last day.
There are many in Lewes who are still resentful that the course was closed. It brought a good deal of cash to the town. Lewes had many racing stables, and a thriving racing community numbered as many as 60 establishments.
But perversely, it was responsible for cleaning up the sport, despite suffering a bout of violence.
The early part of the 20th century saw the rise of vicious gangs around the country. These gangs often fought each other, but to keep cash in their pockets, they targeted racecourses. They would secretly ease their way into courses and then meet up to viciously attack and rob bookies. Racegoers, and even jockeys. They were feared at race meetings throughout Britain. And so it was on a June afternoon in 1936. London villain James Spinks and his gang turned up at Lewes for an attack on bookies. They gathered, some 30 strong, on the edge of the racecourse, ready to pounce. And pounce they did. They attacked and savagely beat a bookie and managed to rob him.
But not known to them, 2 CID officers had been posted in the grounds.
The 2 detectives alerted their fellow coppers and raced towards the gang. According to some reports, a rival gang got into the act and all hell broke loose. It must have been some sight. Villains scattering in all directions. Keystone cops were in full chase, and the excited racegoers panicked and dived for cover. But it was the police on this day at Lewes Racecourse who passed the winning post. They managed to nick 16 of the gang, took them to Lewes, where they were sentenced to long prison terms. That put an end to the decades-old practice of course hijacking by these fearless and vicious gangs.
A real feather in the cap of the Lewes coppers. Nabbed.
Pulling you aside, locals will whisper in your ear that Graham Greene's Brighton Rock was really about Lewes Racecourse. They say the gang fight in his novel was based on the events of Lewes in 1936. To think that Pinky strode this course, what a ghost to have here now.
Well, there we go. I mean, we did indeed produce a couple of Grand National winners here in Lewes. In the 1960s, there was something like 70 to 80 stables. They're producing race horses, giving lots of jobs, and providing a whole sector for the town and giving it an identity. Unfortunately, at the same time, it jammed up the roads, and getting through Lewes because of the race day crowds was almost impossible. Apart from which it gave quite a stink to the place too, because race horses are not that fussy about where they actually go to the loo. But the pubs and the hotels were absolutely jam-packed. It was a great money spinner for the town. But of course, councils are made up of people who go tut-tut at racing. And I'm afraid that the council of the day, and not realizing what they'd got, went along with the national racecourse people and said, yes, it's dreadful. It's got no running water. It's got no electricity. It's got no facilities up there. Better that we should close it down. It doesn't meet the minimum standards. So no effort was made to save it. Now there's every effort to trying to bring it back. I doubt if that's going to reach success. But what is going to happen is that the memory and the background to the race course and the races that were run there is, as we approach 100 years, well, not really, I mean, 1964, but it's not that far away, really. I mean, we're in 2023, and it's only so years for the 100 years anniversary, and it seems to many people here, like yesterday, that the course was closed. I did mention that there's no great race like the Grand National, and that's the Pardubice. The Pardubice is run every October in the Czech Republic, and it is also considered a great race. It's over 4 miles, 4 miles of very tough countryside, not only ditches and fences and hedges and so on, but also open ploughed fields. At one time, it was about half of fields the horses had to negotiate across, and now it's about a quarter. And some of the open ditches, which in days gone by were so deep that a horse and a jockey, if it fell in, it could disappear entirely, and now are drained to make sure that they're only about a foot deep. But nonetheless, it is still a hugely popular race. It attracts about 40 horses each year, and only because of war has it ever been interrupted in something like 300 years. So we have a pretty a tough race schedule, as it were. In here's another one of the Pardubice. You can see down those sort of things before they even start to jump. It's not easy at all. So we do have a relationship in this town of Lewes with the great race courses, great races of the day, and indeed some of our local people have produced winners for these races. So that's at 5:15 to tomorrow on TV. 40 horses at the moment will line up. Right now, there is a very good line, if they want to call it that, on telly about the betting odds, looking at who's likely to win and who's likely to lose. But remember that this is a race, the Grand National, where in the past there have been some incredible victories for most unlikely horses. There's been a cart horse has won it, and 100-1 outsider has won it. But there have been some great horses too, I think, like Red Rum, who have romped home in it. And so it has become a national favourite. And people would have been given the day off, except it's a Saturday, to watch it. It's that become that sort of icon. And that's at Aintree in Liverpool. And a big sporting occasion it is. And Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon, if you're doing nothing else, tune in. Of course, it takes a lot of stick, as these things do. The horses are tested far more. The fences are far too high, and so on and so forth. Well, I mean, the fact is, you either want to enter into that sort of thing or you don't, and I think it's an individual choice. The people who are worried about horses is that those horses will be doing something equally as dangerous, and it's mankind does dangerous things as well. It's one of the ways of life, I'm afraid, and that's the way it should go. So the Grand National will be going for quite some time. Now, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you for about half an hour, and I hope that I'll be back with Melissa Conti. The reason for me leaving you today is I've been running a little appeal for Parkinson's, and in it I'm quite straightforward. I've got Parkinson's, and it gets a little worse each day, just a little worse each day, and I have to live with that, and I have to fight it. But I'm not complaining. I fight it. But I've got a consultant, very good consultant she is too, and she is going to call me at 10 this morning to have a little chat to see how I'm getting on and so on. So for half an hour, I'm going to be looking after my own interests in terms of my health. I hope you'll forgive me for that, and then I will be back. So just for the moment, here is an early toodle pip, but not a permanent one.